uh, just the game itself than what I like to say coaching them when, I'm not so much teaching them any fundamentals. I'm just basically trying to put the game together and help them guide them for that. And like I said, with having a six senior class this year on the varsity team, it's just they really direct me in the right direction on that too, and help me out, show me what and lead me with what's going to work for us because they know what they can do better than I know what they can do. So
That's a great outlook. That's something that I'm working every day to do better at, is to ask the players, where are you at? Where do you want to go? How can we help you? What are you seeing? And then helping to build around exactly what you were talking about. Coaches that recognize that they're going to be out of system a lot will spend a lot of time in practice working on out of system. And if you're a coach that hasn't recognized that yet, then you really you're not paying attention, to the game, because we are out of system a ton. Jim has what I thought was a unique view, and it turns out it's only unique in the United States about on-court communication. And he kind of knocked my socks off, and I went, "Whoa, you are nuts!" And the more we talked about it, and the more I worked on kind of his theory about on court and specifically in play communication, it made our team so much better.
Is I actually had a player who was deaf. So I had one deaf player, and everybody else was obviously hearing. And it becomes a challenge of how do you understand who does what? Because clearly calling the ball for her wasn't going to do anything. And I should also mention she was an outside and one of our primary passers. So it's not like I could just tuck her in a corner and just hope for the best. Like she was going to be involved in virtually every play. So it became the point where I had to understand, what are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish? Because it's not going to work if we try to do it in the play. So we started working through it and making sure that everybody's philosophies, or everybody understood their responsibilities pre-play, because that's the time where you have to talk. As you think about the game, if you're trying to determine whose ball it is after the serve, now you're talking, by the time your three passers identify it, let's say the ball's traveled 15 feet. All right. Somebody now needs to verbalize it. By the time they verbalize it, ball's traveled another 10 feet. By the time the person hears the verbalization and they recognize it, ball's traveled another 10 feet. So we've now at this point traveled 35 feet. The ball's on our side of the net, and I got to go get ready to pass the ball. So it just became something there isn't going to hold up well. So we have spent a ton of time just determining whose ball it is pre-serve so that we can really identify it. And the side effect of that is I also want to make sure that trust your passer. I don't want my passer to be or one person passing and two other people hanging out looking at our passer. I want my one person who identifies that, hey, I'm passing. I want those other two to bail out because they both have something else to do in a split second. So instead of you hanging out, man, transition to your offense. If you're the libero not passing, transition under to be able to go cover your attacker. So it just kind of all drove from there. Never mind the fact, I think it's just at times confusing, right? We've all watched plenty of games, and there's nothing more confusing sitting on the sideline when all you hear is people just yapping and chatting back and forth. And what are they even saying? Like, what's kind of happening there? Is that really helpful, or is that just a lot of white noise that people need to try to filter out the important information on? And
Asking other coaches too. I think it was Lang Ping that, I want to say Kessel told the story about Lang Ping asking, of course, the gold medal player and gold medal coach for China, and she coached here in the U.S. for a quad on our national team. She asked, why do you have to say mine before you take the ball? And that became then I started asking people from other countries, and a lot of people that there's no history of calling the ball. They don't call it. They've already predetermined it, like you've described.
And to me, that's one of the other pieces of this is letting them work it out, and do the learning on their own, because that's
100%. That is a much better learning path than us, right? My particular philosophy is I don't want to have to train them on something if they can learn it on their own, right? Like somebody else, I don't even remember who used this example first, but every one of us is pretty proficient at walking. Well, nobody actually stood there and be like, oh, and this is how you walk. Nah, you just kind of figured it out on your own. So these things can be learned and reinforced on their own. Now, if somebody has a catastrophic error or somebody has a catastrophic problem, yeah, that we fix. But in general, if we can get them to teach themselves, learn it themselves, use the Socratic method, ask a lot of questions to get them to really think through it and understand it. And that's actually another incredibly hard thing, because a lot of players just want to play and go, and they don't keep in the back of the head what's happened. And they don't keep, when you start asking the questions backwards, hey, walk me through the service scene. What happened? What did you see? Okay, ball landed between you and player X. Great. How did the ball get there? Where did it start? What was the trajectory? What did the server do? Where were they pointed? What did their hand look like? What did their foot look like? And then you start asking all those questions, and most players, when you first do it, are just like, "Whoa, what? Something's going. I don't know."
Yeah.
Or even worse, and this is again an incredibly difficult thing to do for coaches, is players are really good at knowing what coaches want to hear. So they just spew back whatever you want to hear. And a lot of coaches are just like, great, they're listening to me, it's fantastic. But that might not actually be what happened. That might not actually be the response. So having to ask them those questions and forcing them to explain, this is what I saw. Okay, you didn't see it, you don't remember? Okay, great. Make sure you're watching that next time. Watch these 4 keys, and then we can have that conversation next time about what happened, why did this go wrong, and
But how do you fight the biases that the kind of the concept of you play like you coach like you were coached?
Yeah, when
I
I
love that
first started
smirk on
coaching,
Dan's face and his little picture, but I'll let
It's
oh,
not
I
Sarah
know,
answer
right?
this.
It
That's a
looks
great
very
that's a
judgy.
great look.
Yeah.
I know for me, I didn't know any different, especially, playing for one club my entire life and having the coach that I had. I just assumed that's how you coach. I had no idea. And honestly, it was that I ended up doing it, and I feel terrible for the kids that, I was screaming at left and right. I wasn't as harsh as him. I didn't use the same colorful language as he did, but I thought that doing one person pitch drills was totally fine, and trying to, hit the ball as hard as you can. That's what you're supposed to do. And making kids, do all these physical things that, I thought that's what you do. And I have a hunger for learning. I love learning. I seriously, someone find a job where I'm just in school all day and I take tests and you pay me, I'll do it. That's what I would love to do. I just love learning. And I went to a Cap One, my work, or the club I was playing for or coaching for in Virginia, when we were stationed out there, was paying for everybody to get Cap One. So I went ahead and did Cap One, and I go, oh, well, that makes more sense. Why would I do it this way? And so then it got me hooked. And I think that, again, this is a really good reason why, the CAP program and education is so important, because I could have been like that my entire coaching career and wouldn't have known any better. It may have taken me even longer. Who knows how many teams I could have ruined, if I just continued down that path. And Cap One really just completely changed my outlook on how to coach. And I was hungry for more, and that's how I fought those biases. It was just learning and listening, not just to people that, I agreed with, as I started to kind of turn the curve, but also listening to people that don't agree with me, and thinking about, I kind of, I take everything. So even if, somebody posts some drill and, I think that it's not the way that Alexis Levidoux refers to it as the most efficient use of your time. Maybe part of that drill is a good idea of a spin on another drill. And so I listen to these things. I take the things that I think are applicable or maybe a different spin on it, and then just apply it to my stuff. So, I think that the education part is really what completely flipped my bias. And now I'm just, I'm all about making sure that kids love the game, because when kids are happy on the court and feel good and confident, they play better. So you don't have as many meltdowns. And that was one of the reasons why I hated coaching for a while, was I hated all of the kids just having these mental breakdowns on the court. I'm like, what is going on? I don't understand. I didn't realize I was part of the problem, aside from their own, pressures at home to excel. So, it was, I wish, I wish that they had that education piece still, but now I just do it on the Facebook group, or I help out a fellow coach and give them some feedback and some ideas for drills, or just be a little snarky on the Facebook group with my comments. But otherwise, yeah, that was what really helped me, was a little better education.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on at your school, and what that's, really what we're here for. Let's hear about what Prentice Volleyball is all about, and how you guys go about that.
If you know anything about the Northwoods of Wisconsin, it's all about basketball. And volleyball was kind of a second-rate sport when I took over. We have, and like I said earlier, I took the job kind of as a patch to help them get through a year and finish out a season and go forward, and kind of fell in love with it. Didn't know much about coaching except for how I was coached when I was in the Air Force. And, I took it upon myself to become a better coach. BJ, you've seen me in CAT clinics and Art of Coaching volleyball clinics, and we obviously have a great program down in Madison, and I've been to Kelly Sheffield's clinics and really threw myself into becoming a better coach and how to coach, and kind of realized with anybody's, obviously I coach girls, but teenagers, you need a PhD in psychology as well as how to coach. So there's been really good years that have been a lot of fun, and there's been years where we've been terrible, and you have to accept that and what you're going to do with it. And year in and year out, it's been, how to get the best out of your players with what we have. I can't recruit. There's no recruiting. I'm not going to go get girls from a different school district to come to Prentice, because the other school districts around us are bigger. So why would somebody leave a D3 school to go to a D4 school? It's just not going to happen. And frankly, as we've gotten better, we've got lower numbers. I had 15 girls come out this year, and we don't have cuts. And it's just about how to make them better with what you have. I probably talk with them in practice more than I should, and try to make them focus on other players and other positions. And yeah, Steve's waving his hand. But last night after we won, one of the parents came up to me and said, "Do you ever say anything when you're on the sideline?" And I'm talking to him a little bit, but the crowd behind me can't see that. But at that point, they're not going to remember something I'm trying to tell them to change it. I need to have done that in practice. And I tell them that you're not, and we have coaches and other teams we play against where they're yelling at the players every play, and the girls make a mistake and they turn and look at the coach. And my girls, they never turn and look at me. They make a mistake, they own it, and they go on to the next play. But that's all in practice. You have to preach that in practice and let them know they're going to make mistakes. I stepped in for a club team 2 falls ago, because the coach had to have her appendix taken out. And I told one of the girls, I said, "Hit the ball." She tipped. Well, she was afraid if she made a mistake, she'd have to run in practice. I told her to hit the bleachers on the other side of the net. And she couldn't believe I told her that. And so the next 3 points, she buried the ball, 18, 20 feet, boom, down, down, down. And finally, the fourth ball, she hit the bleachers. And we all celebrated, and they couldn't fathom why I told them that. Well, her dad came up to me afterwards and said, "What did you say to her?" I said, "I told her swing away." You can't punish a mistake in volleyball. Mistakes happen a lot. The best players watch the Olympics. The best players make mistakes. They shank a ball. They hit one out. I was watching the Badgers in the Nebraska game last night. You don't win 25-0. So 25-23 is a win. And I try to instill them that. You make a mistake, especially teenagers, if you let them dwell on it, you're going to lose 3 points or 4 points instead of just the one.
Yeah. Yeah, we say next. I got this from Mike. We say next point after every point. Let it go.
Yeah.
And I feel like more and more with every year that goes by, it's I think it's less about where you hit the ball and more about which lineups are effective to hold serve, and to side out quickly. The serve and pass battles become so much more pertinent in each high level match. And funny enough, I think there was a volleyball coaches and trainers post a few years back about how serving was only a skill that was taught in 2%, or that took up about 2% of your practices. And I took that to heart. Like, is that true in my own practices? Is that true with what I do? And now, like, serve and pass is probably at least 50%, if not more, of our practices. And for us at Pacific, it comes down to siding out quickly and holding serve. Where I think Coach Gibbons said that we were the best serving team in our conference, and that's really where a lot of our advantages that we need to press as being a shorter team. Not a team with less height than other teams. That's really where hopefully we can score those 3-4 points, and find that balance between serving aggressive and lollipopping it over. And you see sometimes that it's a different person every game. Sometimes you see somebody that's consistent over a longer period of time. But the biggest thing is that should really affect where you start that next set and which rotation. And again, just seeing it firsthand on paper, not only on paper, the stats, but also seeing it with my own eyes in game, seeing those adjustments really, really make a difference. It's something that I was never aware of. And to learn that this year, it's pretty amazing. Again, stats can just be a lot of noise. You can look at blocking percentages, you can look at anything you want, but again, depending on the culture and makeup of your team, for us, serve and serve receive and rotation info and defending that first attack for the other side is just, it's a paramount importance to defend. Right. And, I would say that, the more that I see the serve and pass battle occurring at higher levels, I mean, if you are a good serving team in, 4 or more rotations, you're gonna cause fits for the other team. Again, if you're up against a team that does a lot of coach toss intros, or some sort of first ball intro that's not game like, sometimes the best teams in the country, their main weakness is you serving the ball tough against them, making them move. And once you can build confidence in your own team to win that serve and pass battle, honestly, like 1, 2, 3 aces, you treat them like gold, just like blocks. Your team doesn't have to work so hard on it. It's more of an individual skill than anything else. It's hard to do for sure, but building that confidence into your team really will make a difference. And you'll start seeing that when you do side out, when you do point score 1 or 2, 3 times, when you go back there, you start seeing that your offense is really only scoring a third of your points, maybe less, and your serve and your serve receive are scoring the majority of the points for you.
Yeah. That's always been my attitude is volleyball is something they do 6 to 10 hours a week. The other 150 plus whatever it is hours of the week that are out there that they're not in volleyball, that's their lives. And they've got to live that life. They've got to have a priority in that life. And sometimes what they're doing in that life takes them away from volleyball. And I always just tried to make sure that, okay, all right, you got to go do that stuff, do what you need to do. When you're ready to come back, we'll be here.
Mm-hmm.
You have this place to come back to. This can be your place to, try to make this a priority in your life. But we understand it's very rarely going to be number one.
That, David, is something that I'm certain I've learned from you, in allowing players to come back, to you come and find us, you show up in the gym, and when you come, we want your best, but we just want you to be here, whenever you can. That's a tricky thing for a lot of coaches to get over. Like, they have a hard time with, it's team first, and you have to do everything for the team. And I always have felt, and I think you helped me solidify this, that a player comes to the team as an individual, and they have to figure out how to fit in with that group and how they're going to influence that group. That to me is just a really important idea.
Yeah. I think a lot of these coaches, that they forget that your team is made up out of, 6, 8, 10, 12, however many you have individuals. And I've always believed you make that team stronger. You make that team better as a coach, my job is to develop every one of those individuals. And as they grow, as they get better, as they learn more, they part of that learning is learning to make that team a priority in their life. When you're at volleyball, it all has to be about your team. Advice I give all my young coaches, you park your ego at the door. Because when you walk into this gym, it's not about you. It's not about what you want. It's not about what you think should be done right. It's about those kids on the court.
I noticed something, that not too many minorities were really into volleyball, because everywhere that we played, we were like raisins in a bowl of milk. And I said, there has to be more to this. So I coached for Beach Cities volleyball club. And again, not many minorities there. So my daughter played for the Starlings because she wanted to play with her friends. I didn't pay any attention. I let her go. I went to maybe 1 or 2 games because I thought it was a beginner club, which I have no problem with that. But I had already coached at a higher level, so I wanted to kind of stay at that level. Then I had a philosophy. I needed to teach mentality, decision making. I wanted kids 12 and over to understand what college level ball was like, how they played it, what is to be expected, the education that it takes. Volleyball is a very intelligent sport. The education that it takes to get to the next level, to be educated at the next level, to go in academically, and then to play athletically. But you can make smart decisions in your life, which all transfer to volleyball. There's a guy in Wisconsin, BJ, that you might even know. He has like maybe 47 teams. Yeah, he's huge, and I can't remember the name of him, but I've never carried more than 3 teams. And he was watching my girls play, and he says, "Where did you learn that defense?" I said, "Excuse me?" He says, "Where did you learn that?" I said, I didn't learn that. I created that out of necessity for the girls that I play with. These girls need this type of defense. So he said, I like it. He says, come to Wisconsin, I'll give you 10 teams. I was like, excuse me? He says, come to Wisconsin and coach for me. I'll give you 10 teams. I said, there's nothing in Wisconsin for me. I'm sorry. I don't want to go to Wisconsin. So then he offered to have me come teach what I have in Los Angeles. I said, no, I'm not interested in it. And then while we are talking, and this is an actual true story, there's another coach standing in the back of me. And he says, can I talk to you? And I says, yeah, sure, no problem. He says, I have to apologize to you. I said, for what? He says, that coach right there came to talk to you. That coach is respected. He says, and he's talking to you. And I'm like, and? He says, see those coaches over there? They don't believe you belong here. And I'm here to apologize for them because I just saw your team whoop up on these girls and they played so fast. And he says, and you can't say they're athletic. They look like volleyball players. I said, they are volleyball players. This is what they do. And so that kind of gave me my mantra and added to my philosophy about what the world is in volleyball, where we fit in the world of volleyball, and where we need to go in the world of volleyball. Okay, so a good way to deal with us, and what I found out has worked. My grandfather, he would always sit down and he would be eye level with us. And there was no upper echelon, no lower and everything. We all would sit on the porch when he wanted to talk to us. When it was serious talk, he wanted to talk to us. When we did wrong, he stood above us. When it was serious talk, he sat with us. So my whole thing is like I have what I call the wood talk. I sit everybody on the floor and we sit in a circle. And I tell them why that we sit in a circle. Number one, like I said, the floor is the truth. Anything that happens on the wood stays on the wood. So if you got a problem or whatever, let's talk about it here. I'm not your coach right now. I'm a human being, and I want to talk to you like a human being. I'm not trying to be your therapist or anything like that, but I need you to understand that here we are all equal, and give them a reason not to look at you as that object of superiority, or what they may perceive, you may perceive. And I think that's a whole thing, the perception of them thinking because you are white that you believe that you are superior. When they understand that I am not here to be superior, I am here to help you and to understand and to learn, you'll find out a lot more information than probably you want to know.
Super.
And I've been telling people in impact classes for the last 7, 8, 9 years, I think, that the place where I think we're learning the most about feedback and about working with our athletes is in the para gym, because like you said, the feedback style has to be different. We're not talking about we got to put our hands like this because somebody may not have that hand.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about put your feet this way, your legs this way, or your arms or whatever. It's much more of an exploration. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly some explicit instruction going on, things that, I felt that the coaching staff had determined over years of working with the athletes that in certain circumstances, it's better to do this. It's like if you're, they sit on the ground, and that most of the time there's two positions you sit in. You're either sitting on your butt with like your feet out in front of you and your knees bent, or you're sitting in what I would call like an S position with like one leg folded in front of you and then the other leg back behind you. And, it's if you're right-handed and you're hitting, you're gonna most likely be more effective if you have your right leg back behind you, because that helps you get your right hip back away from the net. And that was something I actually struggled with. I got in and played with them a little bit one day, and I have a pretty bad right hip, so that sitting in that position is very just not comfortable for me at all. Way more comfortable for me to have my left leg back and my right leg in front. And so I was really struggling with hitting because I couldn't get into the same anatomical or position as I would if I was standing. And so I felt like it's the wrong term because it has nothing to do with it, but I was basically goofy.
Earthquake.
Sorry, that was dog bumping into the table. I was basically, like trying to hit goofy footed or goofy sitted. I don't know what the right term would be for it. And so, yeah, I think, but there is a lot of exploration. There's a lot of just get the ball to go here, get whatever you can do. It's so, like one of the players, Maddie Ball, she has a prosthetic left arm. How are you going to talk to her about her platform? She actually has a really amazing platform and passes super well, but I just couldn't, as from a coaching perspective, see, how would you ever be like, hey, you got to get your wrists and hands together, or someone like Nikki, she doesn't have a hand. How are you going to tell her to get her wrists and hands together when she's passing? Or setting wise, she set every ball she set. Now she's not a setter, but she did set a lot in different various activities that they did. And she set everything with one hand. And I'll tell you what, she set better one-handed than most people set with two. And so, yeah, there's so many things that you can't, that you just instinctively recognize from a coaching perspective. I think I can't have that conversation, so it's not even on the table. So let's just have a different conversation. And a lot of the conversation in the gym was focused more on the results, more on the external goals than it was on minute, picky body movements or body parts or internal goals. It was very much about what do we need to have happen in this moment? Not what are you doing, but what do you need to make the ball do? And that's my kind of thing. So I really, really loved it. I thought that was a really cool, aspect of what they were doing.
I got to see the inverse of that when working with Mike Hewlett, and I met him after his Paralympic. Well, he was still working with the Paralympic team when I first met him, and worked with him. But there's the other side of it. Of here's a quad amputee showing everybody the skills of how do you move, and watching him move his prosthetics and show them how was always amazing to me because it was really good. I mean, he had kind of got it boiled down to here's the basics. I can show them with my hooks and by the time I knew him, his one leg, it's really you hit on the point. I find this. I had a kid the other day walk up to me and go, "Coach, what do I need to do I'm just not hitting the ball really well." And I thought, well, I could tell him all this other stuff, and I'm like, just try to find the middle of the ball and see if you can put this on it. Just focus on the ball. And I need to find more extrinsic stuff for them to focus on, because it does, once you get out of their head and every little body movement, they tend to figure it out themselves. That's something that I need to work on more, is finding those extrinsic cues that can get them out of their head.
Yeah, I think it becomes more. It becomes an easier and quicker go-to as a coach, I think, at least my experience there, and maybe I'm biased because that is the way I tend to coach anyway, but it just became an easier way to talk to the athletes when you couldn't talk to them about body parts because they don't have them, or because due to their disability or whatever, they're not going to move the way I have pre-configured in my head.
I just think people are, if you're not paying some attention to our Paralympic teams, you're probably missing out on a huge knowledge base.
Well, I 100% agree. I think you're missing out on a couple things. One, you're missing out on a version of the game that's faster than any other version we play. You know, to me, sitting volleyball is somewhat representational of like, shoot, I just forgot what it's called. What's the smaller pitch version of soccer that's played indoor most of the time with a heavier ball?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. I can't. I just forgot what it's called. But like street soccer, they play with a heavier ball. It forces the ball to stay on the ground longer. They play with smaller teams, smaller field size. So it becomes a much more faster and skill-based game than the full size of the game. I found that with sitting, the speed of the game was just, it was mesmerizing. It was just, I mean, when the net is however high it is off the ground, I don't even know exactly, but I mean, we're talking, 3 feet or so off the ground, or maybe even less. And when that ball is blocked, the ability for the libero to cover that block that's being blocked straight down and still get the ball up, when the ball's only traveling like 2.5 feet instead of, in the men's game, it's traveling, 8.5 feet to the floor, and they're able to fly in and get that ball up. It just, that was that, and so many other aspects of the speed of the game, it just blew me away. But you're right, the adaptability was, I mean, there was talk, not a lot. There was talk about in-system versus out-of-system. Not a lot. Way less than any gym I've ever been in, other than my own. Because it just seemed like it was make the best out of whatever you've got.
A couple things come to mind with that. One is I'm taking perfect pass out of my vocabulary starting today. And BJ, I was thinking you've got that where you're measuring the performance, analyzing the film of or the video of where God, I date myself. The idea of this person is able-bodied but not as good to her right. So what do we do with making, do we practice her to get better at right? Yes, but what other things can we do in terms of positioning and putting her in a better position to be better? Taking that the one step further that the sitting team needs to do is I mean, years ago, I've always had this thought of why do we have to have our setter where our setter is? Why can you not run like a quarterback would in football where, they might roll out left, they might roll out right, it's just one of those things. I don't know if it would work, and I think there's too much risk that it wouldn't work, that coaches don't try it, but or that parents would get upset with them for teaching their kid to set from the other side of the court or whatever. But those are some things that I wonder about. So all those things kind of came flooding in as you were talking about that, Loren.
Yeah, I mean, the setting one's a perfect example. Every rotation 3 on both the men's and the women's side that I saw in that gym while I was there, where the setter is left back, they would push straight up to the net and they would set out of the left side of the court. And there definitely was talk in the gym about perfect pass, but it was kind of like it wasn't put on a pedestal and like worshipped in the same way as I've seen it in the standing game. It was a goal, but it seemed very well understood that goal was kind of like the goal that's driving us to be better, but not the goal that you are going to be held to performing at every time you're on the court. But when they did the little citywide celebration for the gold medal, both he and Jamie Morris were there, and they both got up to talk. And Peter is the chief of sport for USA Volleyball and gets to see all of our different varying forms of volleyball being played. And he said to the girls, he said that their gym is his favorite gym to be in because they are an example of sport being played for the right reasons, simply for the joy of playing sport. And that was definitely my biggest takeaway from being in that gym. That is the message I've been trying to share with every player that I've coached for so many years. And to see a team full of people, a team that is the best team in the world, display that on they just wore their hearts on their sleeve and their joy on their sleeve. And it was just so much fun. BJ, you've been around me a long time. I'm not a guy that smiles a lot, but I couldn't wipe the smile off my face while I was in that gym because it was just so much fun. And they have found that really tricky in some people's minds, but I don't think it's tricky, line where you say, I can still compete to the best of my ability while also having fun. And they did that better than any group, any team I've ever seen, of any gym I've ever been in, of any sport I've ever been in. And it was just really humbling and really cool to see. So I agree with Peter. Like, if more teams could figure out how to play the way they are playing, I think we might have a solution for the issues that are going on with sports. So.
Did you find it easier if there were good coaches out there that you trusted? I just could never find one. And that's why I think I ended up coaching more.
Yeah, and I don't know that this is the right way I should have looked at it, and I kind of still look at it this way, is first and foremost, and obviously being in the sports psychology field, the mental side is huge for me. But I wanted to make sure that no matter where she went, as long as she wasn't getting harmed, seems such a strong word. And I don't mean like abused by any stretch of imagination, but as long as she wasn't developmentally getting harmed, whether it was the skills of volleyball or the mental side of it, I was okay. I realized that she might run into coaches that aren't going to be the best coaches, but as long as they weren't setting her backwards, we'd be okay. And eventually I could step in. Luckily for me, I guess, because of all my ties and knowing, almost everyone, it seems, we haven't run into that problem. I've known every single coach that they have. I've known their styles. I knew what they would be like before we said yes. So there haven't been any of those moments where, well, I hope this works out. It was easy for me. I didn't have to really do a lot of research because I knew it.
That's the question I have is, I only had to do it for a couple seasons, and I sat in the gym watching our daughter play for her high school team. I coached her through her whole club career, but at the high school, I got to watch, and I knew, just like you, I knew the coaches, and both of them in one way or another said, you make us nervous being here in the gym. Like, I'm worried about making sure I do things right. And me, I'm totally approachable. I'm not judging. I just, let's go ahead and play. But how are you dealing with that part of it?
It's actually pretty easy. So I have a process, and I follow it every year now. I'm sure every region's different. So in our region, the offers go out via email. All the offers go out at one time for the whole region. So you try out on Saturday, Sunday, even Monday or Tuesday, but no offers can go out to players until Wednesday, and then you have 48 hours to accept. So we do the tryouts, and I let her go through the conversation. But then when we accept, we get the email, hey, you're offered this spot. The first thing I do is we accept. Hey, Morgan is excited to actually, now it's Morgan sends the response. I'm excited to join your team. We accept. And then I immediately follow it up with an email saying, hey, I know this could be awkward for both of us, but I want you to know that I am 100% here to support you as her coach and the coach, but I am not going to stick my nose in it. So I don't want you to feel like I'm upset or being cold, but I don't want to bring that drama in. So if you want anything from me, you're going to have to ask me. I will not volunteer it. And it's going well. I mean, again, we're only 2 years into it, 3 years, starting this year. So that may change over time, but I wanted to make sure that they knew, because the other side of it is, if I'm quiet, then people assume that I'm upset about something or I'm not involved. And I want to make sure that they understood that. Like, no, if you're harming, or I think there's a red flag, yes, of course I'm going to step in and say, this is the issue. But look, I get it. We're all going to make mistakes. You're going to make coaching decisions that I don't agree with, but you also are going to have more data points and more things that that maybe I'm not privy to. I watched Penn State play last night and lose against Pitt. And already some people are questioning some decisions, and I'm like, I'm not going to question any of those decisions that Russ made, because I don't have all the input. I don't know what they have going on. So that's just kind of how I look at it. I'm not going to throw my 2 cents in. Now, if you come up to me and say, hey, what do you think, or what did you see? Then we'll have that conversation. But it's really tough. And I'm an introvert to begin with. So you add that into it, and it can be a little uncomfortable.
But tell us a little bit about your volleyball journey, how you got started, and where you've been playing and where you're going.
Yeah, so I think I started actually wanting to start playing club once I found out club, which was in 5th grade, because all my friends were kind of trying out, or we were doing it, and PE and stuff. I mean, no shame to my PE teachers, but PE volleyball is just it's just disgusting. So it was I would be nobody in 5th grade would know what a seam was, so you can't call a seam, so you were taking everything in back court. But it was kind of you have to play the biggest role you can if you're in that type of situation, because nobody in that class knows how to play like you do. Yeah, and I think it was when I first realized I kind of wanted to go into the whole volleyball thing was, I think I was I might have been 6, and I went to this tournament with my dad. It was an outdoor volleyball tournament. It was a grass tournament. And we woke up at 6 in the morning, and he goes, are you sure you want to go with me? And it was immediate, yes, I want to go with you. It's just you want to play. And knowing I wouldn't play because it's an adults AA tournament, knowing I'm 6, this little kid that can't even touch the bottom of the net. But it's just being able to watch that ball get smashed into the ground. That's just the coolest thing ever.
When you're playing with other players who are either more skilled or less skilled, how do you, what are some of the things that you do to try to keep them or help them develop, especially for somebody who's brand new,
For beginner players, I mean, especially trying out for littler clubs, I think it was definitely you have fun, because I think that's the first mistake I made going into playing club. I am so hard on myself when I literally don't need to be at all. like it's, so it would be like, even just like being like, hey, make sure you hold your platform, you'll definitely get a cleaner pass. Like, it's just like giving them more positive feedback than negative, because I don't think I say much negative about like players on my team, or like even just in like open gyms or whatnot. But just telling them that it might be a rough start, but it's like you'll get better at it.
Morgan, what do you see in the next couple of years? Do you see yourself getting your dad more involved in your coaching, or less, or the same, or how do you view it?
I mean, I still want to be at the on the bench at York. Like, I don't think I'll have an option. Like, I'll literally hide in the back of his trunk if that lets me go. But I think that, like, yeah, I think he'll help me, but like I don't think it'll be like the biggest, like he's taking over everything. Like, I'll still want to do stats and stuff. So
What kind of stats are you taking for York? What are you paying attention to on your clipboard? Because I know I do it at Green Bay, and I have some specific things. So I'm interested in what you're doing.
I don't know what they're called, because I just saw him doing it one day and just kind of took it over. And then the assistant coach was like, "Well, you need to start
Trend.
doing this." Yeah, but I like I would pay attention, and like the bench would be like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "My brain hurts looking at that." I'm like, "How does that make your brain hurt? Like, it's cool." But I would like explain everything, and it would be like I had somebody ask me, "Why were you on the bench? Like, why were you coaching?" I'm like, I don't know. I got bored one day and just decided to come sit on the bench."
Morgan, what kind of questions do you ask the players?
I think some of them were like, it was a running joke, and one time at a match, the match was going so slow. It was like we were down like 2-0, and I came up with the thing because they call them sparts. So I go, would you rather be smarts or would you rather be farts? Because right now you're being a mix of both, and there's like not supposed to be a mix. And then we ended up going back, winning 3 straight sets in a fifth, and completely demolished them. So it was kind of just like, would you rather be like sitting doing homework right now, or would you rather be on a court playing? Like,
the plan was to take her to convention and pay for it so that she could do all the sessions and sit in and do everything. So maybe next year she'll go to Nebraska with me. I'll probably present next year, and but I think that's the next step for her, is getting her on the Kessel train and her understanding the more Yoda, less Superman, and Socratic method, and all that, because I think she has the knowledge, and now we need to get her to figure out how to get other people to buy into it. And I think that's kind of what she learned the last 2 years, that you can't just tell people what to do. It's going to come off as bossy, that she has to learn how to lead them to where they want to go. I mean, and the fact that I'm thinking about my 13-year-old daughter, learning those concepts is freaking amazing to me. And someone asked me the other day, like, can't you wait? Like, can't you wait until your daughter's playing in college? And I said, I don't know if she will or not. I hope she does, or whatever. But really what I'm waiting for is the moment that I can be her assistant coach. The day that she calls me and says, Dad, I want to coach and I want you to be my assistant, that's it. Like, that literally is my moment. Like, and it'll definitely happen sooner than later. There's no doubt in my mind. And I don't want her to be my assistant. I want to be her assistant.
I'll tell you, the one thing that I keep reminding myself is, having worked, I talk about working with Mike Hewlett, and as skilled and knowledgeable as he was always talking to other coaches about, am I thinking about this the right way? What are some other ways that we might think about this? What other things can be done? And we've had some of that when we had Daryl on. He was talking about, I don't worry about being in system as much. I worry about, can we put the ball to an aggressive spot and make an attack? And I don't care how it happens. I mean, it's nice when it looks pretty, but as long as it's an attack and it puts the other team at risk, That's kind of the thing I'm looking for. Those kinds of things. It got me to question. I got to rethink my coaching game, and I hope that happens for every coach.
It's funny you say that, because I was just having this thought last night. When you look at teams at the Division I level that are traditional powerhouses, but they have a down year, or they don't go as far as you expect, my thinking now has become more about not who they recruited or what they're doing. My thought becomes, is there other coaches in the gym challenging each other? And is that why those teams were great? And, Nebraska obviously recruits great. Cook's a good coach, but I think Cook was the best when he had the assistants that didn't always buy into what he was doing and challenging him. And I think sometimes assistants move on and get their own jobs, or whatever happens, and someone comes in and there isn't that challenge. And I think that's what's missing in the coaching world as well, is that challenge system isn't there.